Hello and welcome to another Standard Games video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at a green-white enchantment deck updated with March of the Machine, the Aftermath, which introduces two key cards to the archetype. There's Invasion of Theros, and there's Calix, Guided by Fate, a 3-mana 2/2 legendary enchantment creature, so it also counts as an enchantment for our various enchantment synergies, saying whenever Calix or another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, put a +1/+1 counter on that target creature, so very similar ability to the Generous Visitor. And then whenever Calix or an enchanted creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we may create a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment we control, and this only once each turn. So Calix also synergizes very nicely with Audacity, a 1-mana enchantment aura, which can give us an enchanted creature, giving it 2 extra power and trample. So if we have a large creature after putting a bunch of +1 counters on it from Generous Visitor and from Calix, we can now also give it trample, make it easier to hit the opponent, and enable Calix's ability to copy one of our non-legendary enchantments. And then whenever Audacity is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we still get to draw a card at least. But even without Audacity, we can still hit the opponent directly with Calix to start copying our enchantments and take over the game. And then the other new Aftermath card is Invasion of Theros, a 4 defense counter battle. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an aura, god or demigod card, reveal it and put it into our hand. Don't have any gods or demigods, even though we could include 1 copy of Heliod to search up, but we do have quite a few auras, including our 2 copies of Audacity, which is excellent for transforming our battle by trampling our creature, get past any chum blockers. And then we also have 4 copies of Ossification, the key removal spell in this deck, so that's why having plenty of basics is important. We've got 5 plains and 5 forests, could even go up to 11 or 12 basic lands to enable Ossification, and then it gets to exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Ossification leaves the battlefield, so nice and efficient removal spell. And then once we transform our Invasion of Theros, we get Ephara, Ever Sheltering, a 4/4 legendary creature god that's also an enchantment, so when we cast it after transforming our invasion, we can still trigger cards like Generous Visitor or Calix, which is quite nice. And then we get a 4/4 saying it has a lifelink and indestructible as long as we control at least 3 other enchantments, and whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card, so this card can take over the game very quickly indeed. And then the rest of our deck has a lot of the usual suspect. I'm also running 2 copies of Skrelv to protect some of our key creatures from spot removal. Can also be helpful at giving Calix a way to attack past blockers to hit the opponent and copy your enchantments. And then at 2 mana, the full set of Naturalist, another key card in this deck, 2/2 enchantment creature with lifelink, giving all our enchantments a 1-mana discount. We've got Weaver of Harmony, which will give our enchantment creatures +1/+1, and can also copy the activated or triggered abilities we control from an enchantment source, so it can maybe draw 2 cards when a Spirited Companion enters a battlefield. We can exile 2 creatures or planeswalkers with Ossification. We can also double the triggers from a transformed Ephara and get extra +1 counters from Calix, so the Weaver's quite versatile. Can also potentially copy the triggers from our Reign of Truth, giving a creature +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment we control on the first 2 chapters, so that can also represent a ton of extra damage, and eventually transforms into the Portrait of Michiko, which gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment we control, including itself. And then there's a Cameo of Transience, a 2/2 trampler that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever we cast an enchantment spell, even if it gets countered. And then end of turn we can also potentially get it back from our graveyard if an enchantment was put into our graveyard from the battlefield this turn, so it can be a nice recursive threat in the grindier matchups. And then we mentioned Spirited Companion, gets to draw a card when it enters, can trigger Visitor and Calix as an enchantment creature, also gets bumped by Weaver of Harmony, and something we can sacrifice to an opposing Invoke Despair to protect the rest of our board. And then our mana base needs to have plenty of basics, still get to play with a lot of green-white dual lands, which is one of the advantages of a green-white aggro deck in Standard, as we get 4 copies of a Razorverge Thicket, and then 2 copies of Farmland, 4 copies of Brushland to make sure those early lands come into play untapped, and then both Seiju and Daiganjo offer additional utility as well. So that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a pretty slow hand, admittedly. Although Weaver can be nice with Companion, both pumping it up and then doubling the trigger to draw 2 cards. So I'll try it. And then turn 2 could already play Weaver, especially for up against a deck that doesn't pack a ton of removal. Although Mono Red could certainly have some answers. I think I'm still gonna give it a try. No 1-mana burn spell. And we get to untap. So play Companion. And then Weaver can copy the ETB effect. their opponent's going to Lightning Strike in response. Okay, at least they had to use a burn spell on my creature. And that Naturalist is a great pickup in this matchup. Squee we're going to want to deal with as soon as possible before it gets out of hand. And yeah, I'm probably fine trading with the Goblin, even though the Companion could help pressure Invasion of Theros. So we can double spell here, Naturalist into Ossification, for instance. Don't quite have the extra white mana to play Companion also. Naturalist probably eats a burn spell before it can gain 2. So Spear, yep. And a Mechanized Warfare was a reason to potentially hang on to a Boseiju, but that's okay. Okay, so now we can almost empty our hands. If I go Invasion of Theros into Weaver, we're still going to be 1 damage short of transforming it. So maybe better to start with the enchantments here. So let's go Companion first. Picked up a Plains. So now I'm liking Weaver plus Invasion of Theros. And then Invasion can pick up another Ossification. Audacity also an option actually. But yeah, Ossification might be better. And try and transform our Invasion into Ephara, which can draw some more cards. Opponent found Invasion of Regatha and another Swift Spear. Down to 2 cards in hand. Although now the Invasion of Regatha with Mechanized Warfare can deal 2 to one of our creatures. So that's pretty good. We'll take the damage. Skrelv was nice. So now if I play Ossification, I could also double it with a Weaver. So we're probably going to see a response from our opponents. Could also transform our Invasion of Theros first, because then we get to draw off Ephara as well. So maybe start there, sending 2 creatures at it to make sure it transforms. Opponent could still have a removal spell here. Okay, that works. And get Ephara. And then now Ossification. Copy the trigger with Weaver of Harmony. And draw off Ephara. Could also double the card draw trigger from Ephara, but just exiling their 2 creatures seems better. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, and yeah, this should work. Turn 1 Visitor into Companion, hit our land drops for Calix. And then we've got a bit of removal, a few ways of pumping our creatures as well, to help maybe Calix connect. Opponent blue-white soldiers, so expect them to have the reinforcements here to make 2 1/1s. Visitor pumps itself for now. And do we want to trade Visitor for reinforcements? Not really, so we'll just hang back. Audacity is also going to be key alongside Calix, so that's exciting. So the main interaction we have to watch out for here is a Brutal Cathar exiling one of our creatures. So play Calix and then could put counter on Companion ×2. Don't expect my opponent to block. And then next turn, if Calix survives, Audacity on Companion is likely to connect and copy one of our enchantments, and could copy Ossification, which is going to be devastating. Take 5. Okay. So to spread out the wealth, maybe Audacity on Companion, and then counter on Calix. And then we get an extra counter, this one on Visitor. Ossification, Exile Siege Veteran. Extra counter on, let's say, Visitor. And another counter incoming, which we'll put on Calix. And then attack with a Trampling Companion, which is guaranteed to connect. I'll just play it extra safe, keep some creatures back. Calix only triggers once each turn. And then we'll copy Ossification. Exiling Veteran. Okay. And our opponent explodes. Next turn we can do it once again, and the Reign of Truth is going to be utterly devastating. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Kami good at pressuring our Invasion of Theros. And then a couple enchants to grow it. Opponent on red-black. So turn 2 Kami is pretty good. No early removal so far. And a Harvester. Okay, so we have a few options. I don't think I want to play Invasion since it doesn't grow Kami of Transience. So maybe just go for a Spirited Companion, although it's not the most mana efficient play, admittedly. Don't think we want Ossification, a Harvester. So yeah, I'll go with Companion and then see what we pick up. A land. So I'll just play a land and pass. Don't really want to trade for Harvester when we need to pressure our Invasion of Theros. Their opponent is playing blue as well. They had the Abrade. Calix isn't bad, so we can give that a shot. And then if Calix puts a counter on himself, he's out of range from Harvester, since their opponent's never going to trade for a 2/2 Companion here. And then if they do find another way of taking out Calix, at least I get my Kami back. Keeping Companion in play also important to shield us against an Invoke Despair. Opponent passes, presumably with counterspell mana. So, got a few potential approaches here. Invasion of Theros is tempting, but if they kill Calix, then we don't have any way of really pressuring the invasion. So maybe this is a good turn to double spell with Naturalists and see how they respond. Also makes it easier to play around a counterspell like Make Disappear. So counter on Companion for now. And then now I could Reign of Truth. Still have 2 mana for Make Disappear. And probably just pump Companion, counter on Calix. So it can also attack past Harvester. And send in both. Okay, opponent had to go for the throat, but they waited long enough for us to pick up extra counters and extra power from Reign of Truth. So, didn't really feel the need to do anything else here. Get our Kami back end of turn since an enchantment ended up in the graveyard. And then now with Reign of Truth we've got a reasonable setup to transform our Invasion of Theros. Corpse Appraiser luckily doesn't get to exile Kami. Might see Harvester kill Naturalist. So then Companion still grows up to a 4/4, forcing a chump from Corpse Appraiser to prevent us from transforming. So we've got a couple options. I can guarantee transforming Invasion if we Ossification the Corpse Appraiser, but that seems unnecessary. So instead, probably go for Kami into Invasion, and then when we get to potentially transform into Ephara, I get to put an extra counter on the Kami as well. And then if they chump, we'll have a Trampler in play for next turn to try again. Opponent doesn't have Make Disappear mana up anymore. So the best they can have is a cut down for Kami. And then I'll just grab another Ossification. I guess the line of playing invasion and then ossification to be guaranteed a transformed invasion could have been reasonable. The only issue is that our opponent may be able to remove enough enchantments for us to no longer have an indestructible Ephara, and we don't want our opponent to remove it. Invoke Despair happens, so we'll sack Kami as our creature, and Reign of Truth as our enchantments. And we'll get to return Kami end of turn. We'd love to pick up another cheap enchantment we can play here. Although now with Invasion I can get Audacity to transform the first Invasion and play Visitor as well. Okay, that seems fine. And there's a Ephara, get another counter. And then we're potentially ready to get another one, although it is legendary, so no need to attack the second invasion right now. Harvester plus Bankbuster are both fine. So let's draw some extra cards here with Ephara. Kami into ossification. And then +1 counter, maybe still on Visitor here, so it can attack past the Bankbuster. Although if our opponent crews it, we've got a second ossification to get rid of it. And now Ephara's indestructible. Opponent did not crew the Bankbuster. And our opponent explodes. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a pretty nice hand. Turn 1 Visitor, turn 2 Kami. And now a basic land for ossification. I did briefly consider replacing Eiganjo with an extra basic, just to increase our odds that we have a basic for ossification. But yeah, it's a close call. The channel land can certainly have its moments. Now we can run out Kami before Weaver. Up against what could be mono blue with Haughty Djinn. So then Eiganjo could also be a nice removal spell. Okay, so I don't expect my next play to necessarily resolve, although that being said, they didn't cast anything turn 2, so maybe Calix will resolve. And we get a bunch of counters regardless. Pump up the Visitor for now in case they have a bounce spell. It's going to be easier to replay Visitor. So opponent's not doing a whole lot. Could see a Thirst for Discovery here. Possible our opponent's got a bunch of Tolarian Terrors and Haughty Djinns in hand. Yep. Blue March could also easily be one of the cards in hand. So there's Haughty Djinn, presumably with a way to protect it in hand. But yeah, we should be in decent shape regardless. Can both cast Ossification and channel Eiganjo for 2 mana. But I want to cast my enchantment before attacking to get the extra counters. Counter on Kami should be fine. Build it up in case a Tolarian Terror shows up. And then if our opponent goes for a slip out to back here, we always have the option of just playing Weaver. Okay, opponent had the negate. So now we don't actually have any enchantments in play that we can copy with Calix, but we should still attack all out. Opponent's likely to block Calix, and then Eiganjo will take out Haughty Djinn. Sweet. Alright, and our opponent explodes. On to the next one. Alrighty, we're on the play, and a solid hand. Probably starting with Kami, so it can grow. Don't have too many spells that take advantage of the Naturalist's discount. Okay, Visitor's nice too. So yeah, Kami first, and then next turn Visitor plus Naturalist should be okay. Can always pivot and go Naturalist plus Ossification if there's a creature that needs answering. Opponent a red-black, so one of those mid-range decks. Yeah, Visitor plus Naturalist looks good. And then next turn we can play a cheap Spirited Companion. Opponent may prioritize taking out the Naturalist, which we don't really mind. And if Kami dies, we can often get it back from the graveyard, so this one's pretty good in the mid-range matchups, for as long as the opponent doesn't play Way to Exile it. Turn 3 Fable. So we have a few options here. Could play Kami, play Companion, and then we'll have a 3-3 blocker to prevent the Shaman from getting a free attack in, and then just attack all out, take any trades that happen. And then if we draw a white source with Companion, we could still Ossification. Could also just go Kami plus Ossification. But if I can keep this for a potential Shieldred, that might be better. So we'll try this approach. And this way we maximize the Kami +1 counters as well. And then Visitor counter on itself, or we can pump up Naturalist. I'll go with counter on Visitor and then just offer the trade. Okay, attack all out. Opponent is free to trade with any of our 2/2s, but we're applying the maximum amount of pressure. Kami back to block the Shaman, and then now we still have Ossification in case a Shieldred were to show up. Opponent attacks. Gix as a sweeper, that could hurt. But still gonna block here. Invoke Despair shouldn't be too bad, since we have a Spirited Companion we can sacrifice. Shieldred at 5 mana is also not gonna cut it, and our opponent explodes. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a reasonable hand. Turn 1 Skrelv to protect our turn 2 Weaver. And then we can maybe even copy our Reign of Truth trigger with the Weaver. Opponent on a mid-range deck with a Bankbuster. Could take it out with Boseiju, but we'll wait on that for now. Can also double the Ossification trigger to exile multiple creatures or planeswalkers. Companion ×2 is also fun, so let's start there. I always go in full control just to make sure I don't miss the window of opportunity, but I think the game pauses automatically. Okay, picked up another Companion and Weaver, so not a bad start. Just gotta watch out for sweeper effects like Brotherhood's End here, which could still wipe our board. Path of Peril, yeah, that's pretty much the same. So that's a big setback. Now we gotta rebuild, but we don't have Skrelv to protect our Weaver anymore. So, do I still play Companion? I think I do, as opposed to waiting. We'll probably be able to copy other things with Weaver, assuming it survives. Could always channel Boseiju, but giving the opponent extra mana at this time also seems sketchy. I guess Companion first, and then we can reevaluate. Could put a couple Audacities on the Companion in case it dies. But let's save that for next turn. And go for the Throat Kills Weaver. And a Harvester. Okay. Can crew Bankbuster as well, hit us for 4. So now Calix could be a great draw, since we can immediately get value from it. Visitor's not bad either. Kind of like going double Audacity plus Reign of Truth and go all in here. Want to get Companion at least up to 3 toughness so it doesn't die to Harvester. So maybe 1 counter on Visitor is still okay. Hit for 11. So now if they don't have spot removal for Companion, we could still get there, but don't count on it. Invoke Despair, I can sacrifice Visitor, and then either an Audacity or a Reign of Truth. Opponent takes out Visitor for starters. So now Invoke Despair would kill Companion. And yep, there it is. Sacrifice Audacity as our enchantment, I suppose. That's a very interesting timing window. So found a Calix, which makes the most sense here. Already have double ossification, which is the only card we can get with Invasion at this stage. Another Go for the Throat. And another Harvester. And our opponent's gonna get in for 4. Another Calix is nice. So ossification after playing Calix to get extra counters. Exile Harvester. So as long as our opponent keeps playing creatures out, we're good. But seems like they've got a lot of removal. Shieldred's fine. Bangbuster can draw to gain 2 life, or can crew to attack for 4, but then we can just block with Portrait. Now they can maybe threaten to attack, since they could still have removal for Calix at instant speed to shrink down the Portrait. But don't expect them to go for it. Opponent passes. Okay, so I guess step 1 ossification, Shieldred. Let's see what the response is. Calix puts counter probably on himself now. Portrait's large enough. Opponent can crew Bangbuster defensively, but then they won't get to draw with it and gain life. And a Crucible channeled. So yeah, unfortunately we don't have another Audacity to search up with Invasion of Theros. That would have been very helpful. But I'll still play it out. Get ossification. And then Portrait attacks Invasion. Don't expect my opponent to block with everything. So they might just jump with a 1-1. Opponent does go for the trade. That works. So now we've got free reign to potentially hit the opponent with Calix and copy some of our enchantments. So any enchantments we draw are great here. Opponent passes. And yeah, we did not quite find what we were hoping for. I could cast Ossification just to get a counter on Calix to transform Invasion of Theros. Could also attack the opponent to copy an Ossification that doesn't do anything. I don't want to waste Ossification, have the opponent play instant speed removal on Calix, and then be left with nothing, basically. So maybe I do just attack the Invasion and take it from there. Is this an Abandoned Mire, maybe? Yep. So our opponent can get back Shieldred. That's not too bad. Even if they play a second creature, it's probably not a disaster. Now the blood token represents some life gain. And Weaver was excellent. So play Weaver first and then Ossification, so we can put counter on Weaver. Calix is large enough. Opponent's gonna draw to gain 2. Discarding an Underdog. And then now getting the Indestructible Ephara is probably worth it, as opposed to copying Weaver of Harmony, which I guess is also pretty tempting here. How do we lose? I guess our opponent casting another Path of Peril with Kicker, although they don't have white mana for it. They might have other sweepers, so maybe the Indestructible Ephara there will be more helpful. Okay, Opponent's at 11, but they've got a lot to deal with here. Fable's fine. And Underdog just to draw a card, basically. So they seem pretty dead, especially if we draw another enchantment for an extra counter here. And a Reign of Truth will certainly do it. Could even copy it with a Weaver, but no need. Get to draw Fefara, get a bunch more counters. And our opponent explodes. Awesome, managed to come back from a pretty back-breaking Invoke Despair. So yeah, even against a red-black mid-range deck, where Invoke Despair is one of the best cards against the green-white enchantment strategy, we can still potentially get away with it if we have cards like Spirited Companion to sacrifice. Although if you're playing this in best of 3, I also recommend having Teachings of the Kami in the sideboard for the Rakdos mid-range matchups, as that way you can sacrifice Teachings and the token without losing too much else, so that card also lines up quite favorably. And then you've got a ton of other options, of course, too, including Catilda for life gain. You've got the Hallowed Haunting to go over the top in the grindier matchups by making an Army of Spirits, and there's a bunch more powerful enchantments I did not include here in the best of 1 version. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.